Welcome to this session on contemporary socio-political philosophy. Today we have with us Dr. Nasi, former professor and head Department of Philosophy, University of Kerala. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. So, we have discussed the social and political philosophy of Sri Aurobindo in the first session. We began our discussion with mentioning the characteristic features of contemporary social and political philosophy, because it is different from the traditional Indian philosophy. In the sense, it is based on the traditional philosophical principles, but refined and modified in the context of the modern influences like the Islamic influence and the Western influence. Accordingly, we find contemporary Indian philosophy more humanistic in character, more open and dynamic in character, more man-centered and worldly than the otherworldly in character, and therefore, the social and political aspects become more important. And Sri Aurobindo is one of the typical representative of contemporary India, who spoke about the social and political philosophy. So, in the social aspect, the central concern of Sri Aurobindo is about the human being, man. So, he says that man is a combination of three elements, or we can say he has got three parts of soul: the external part, the internal part and the higher part. The external is the physical, the internal is what he calls as the psychic being, and the higher part he calls as the divine being. The goal of human life is the attainment of the divine being, and this divine being can be attained by a process of evolution which the psychic being undergoes. So, psychic being is the medium or the means through which man can attain his divine being, and on the attainment of his divine being he becomes the gnostic being, and in the gnostic being there is no ignorance, no darkness, it is all complete light, complete knowledge, full consciousness. And Aurobindo says that this gnostic being is just like a Jivan Mukta of the traditional Indian concept, with a single difference or a small difference between them. It is the function or duty of the gnostic being to bring the higher consciousness down to the level of the psychic being, so that the ordinary human being can be raised to the level of the supreme being or gnostic being. And this is not supposed to be the function of Jivan Mukta. So, this is a slight difference between Jivan Mukta and gnostic being. In short, the destiny of the human being is not limited to this world according to Aurobindo. He has to perfect himself. He has to become perfect, undergoing through a process of evolution, getting the strength from the higher, the Brahman or the absolute, and thereby becoming what is called Superman or gnostic beings. This is what we have already discussed. The second point about Sri Aurobindo is the political philosophy. And in discussing political philosophy, Sri Aurobindo takes mainly 2 points. One is the concept of nationalism, and the second is the concept of human unity. So, these two concepts are very central to the political philosophy of Sri Aurobindo.
Okay, ma'am, can we go through one by one?
Yes.
First, we can discuss about nationalism.
Yes.
So, what was his views on nationalism?
Yes. Sri Aurobindo places very strong emphasis upon the concept of nationalism, because he feels that it is a concept that is not understood properly, particularly by the Indian mind. So, that concept of nationalism is to be understood in the correct sense, and hence he is giving detailed explanation of what is meant by nationalism. So, in explaining it, for example, he has written an article in the journal Karma Yogin.
Karma Yogin is the article?
No, Karma Yogin is the journal. Actually, the journal is started by Aurobindo himself. In one of his editions in 1909, there came an article on nationalism written by Aurobindo himself. Okay? So, it indicates his political sagacity and broad vision. So, that is the beginning of Sri Aurobindo explaining his views on nationalism. So, that very article reveals the political sagacity of Sri Aurobindo as well as his broad vision regarding the concept of nationalism. His views on nationalism are marked by universality and timelessness. He does not mean that universality, nationalism is a current concept, meaningful only for the present time. No, he says that it is a universal concept. It is a concept having timelessness.
Timelessness in the sense means?
It has got a past, it has got a present, it will have a future. It is applicable to irrespective of the time. That concept of nationalism is meaningful. It is applicable. He spoke of nationalism as a social phenomenon. So, first he says that it is a universal principle. It has got it is not subjected to time, and then he says that nationalism is a social phenomenon. So, he gives all the aspects of nationalism so that it should be understood in toto or incomplete. Nationalism is an idea. He explains it. It is an avatara, that is what he says, just like an incarnation, okay? Or yes, incarnation performing divine work before it returns to its source. So, an avatara means, incarnation means it has got a function and performing the function, and then it has to go back.
Returns back,
to its original place. That is what it is called, an avatara. So, a patriot lives for his country and dies for her because she demands it. So, nationalism is expressed in a patriot, a person who loves his country, and what he does is he lives for his country, and this is something demanded by the country from that patriot. It is a demand of her country, of his country, okay, demand by the country. India failed to establish a distinct, organized and self-conscious nationality because it is a nation of isolated village republics, which is an obstacle to national unity. See, he is a critique of the current Indian nationalism.
That what is existing now?
Yes. Now, in the sense, in his time.
Okay.
Now, what he says is that here we have no nationalism. Actually, the idea of nationalism has not been understood or developed here. The main hindrance, there is a main hindrance for that. The hindrance is, see, because India is a nation of isolated village republics. We know India is a land of villages. We want to see know India, you have to go to the villages. That is what we all hear about it. So, this is something, an obstacle, a hindrance in the realization of what is called a nationalism. That is the opinion of Aurobindo. So, there is no nationalism here understood properly because there are isolated villages, so many isolated villages, village kingdoms, village republics in India. India is made up of so many isolated village republics. So, this is actually an obstacle in realizing the concept of nationalism. Okay? Now, Aurobindo warns us not to revive such independent villages or groups of villages. So, our goal is realizing nationalism, and therefore, what we have to do is not to go for that village republics, not to revive them. We have to move forward but to create something else. So, reviving the concept of village republics is actually going back to nationalism. It is not nationalism according to Aurobindo. At the same time points out the need for a self-sufficient, self-centered, autonomous and exclusive nation. So, he uses the word a nation, not village republic or villages. So, we want an autonomous nation, an exclusive nation, a dominant nation, not a village, not a cluster of republics, not a group of republics or villages in India. The ideal of national Swaraj, this is what we need. We need a national Swaraj by gathering the rural population into a mighty, single and compact democratic nationality. So, we need not reject the village republics, we have to gather them together, we have to unite them together, so that we might become a mighty population, a single population, a compact democratic population called nationality. This is his preliminary understanding of nationalism. So, nationalism is to be created here, and in the present context there is an obstacle for that. The obstacle is the presence of a number of villages, because India is divided into village units. These village units are standing independently. So, independent village units are not conducive to the development of nationalism. Therefore, what we have to do is combining, uniting all these village units into an autonomous and a compact democratic unity, and then only nationalism will develop. That is his preliminary observation regarding nationalism. Okay. Then, commenting on the article nationalism, he says that he cannot agree with the conclusion that nationalism is the highest of all synthesis. Now, he goes on. He says that if you say that nationalism means it is a synthesis of all village units, if you synthesize and integrate all village units, then nationalism will come. There is a view like that. Then it means abolishing all villages, then nationalism will come. So, Aurobindo says that that is not correct. I do not agree with that, because he says that in India we do not recognize the nation as the highest synthesis to which we can rise. There is a higher synthesis, humanity. Beyond that, there is a still higher synthesis, this living, suffering, aspiring world of creatures, the synthesis of Buddhism. There is a highest of all, the synthesis of God, and that is the Hindu synthesis, the synthesis of Vedanta. This is what he says. So, it is not simple nationalism, so it is a synthesis of all nations together, synthesis of humanity, as so many examples as in Buddhism or as in Vedanta. In Vedanta we can have one example of the synthetic synthesis of all things together, identity of Atman and Brahman we find there. So, that kind of a synthesis is needed, that is what he says. With us today, nationalism is our immediate practical faith and gospel, not because it is the highest possible synthesis, but because it must be realized in life if we are to have a chance of realizing the others. So, now we are talking about nationalism. Why? Because not because it is the highest one. The highest one, he said, it is synthesis of humanity. That is the highest one. Now, why we are emphasizing nationality? Because realizing nationality is the first stage for realizing humanity. See, if only you realize nationalism, then only you can rise to the level of humanity. That is why nationalism is important. So, nationalism is not our final goal, it is only our primary first goal, first step. Okay? If only you realize nationalism, you can rise to the level of humanity. Then, we must live as a nation. Before we live, we can live in humanity. See, we must live as a nation, the Indian nation. So, for that what we have to do? We have to unite all the villages. We cannot remain as villages. If we remain as villages, we cannot be a nation. If we remain as a nation, we cannot realize the humanity. So, we have to rise from the level of villages to the level of nation and then to the level of humanity. It is for this reason that nationalistic thinkers have always urged the necessity of realizing our separateness from other nations and living to ourselves for the present, not in order to shut out of humanity, but that we may get that individual strength, unity and wholeness which help us to live as a nation for humanity. So, why we are emphasizing nationalism? Because if only you realize a nationalist life, nationalism or nation, if you realize a nation, then only you can rise to the level of humanity. Okay? So, humanity is our final goal. Nationalism is our immediate goal. So, know the nationalism, then rise to the level of humanity.
So, here also there is an integralism.
Yes, of course, that is a synthesis. Okay? From the village level to the nation level, then to the level of humanity. So, things are growing, moving, just like in the other case we have seen the psychic being, divine being, the absolute. I mean the Gnostic being, you have to grow, that is a final goal is there. A man must be strong and free in himself before he can live usefully for others. That is what he says, he gives examples. So, suppose you want to live for others, then before living for others, you must get yourself the strength to live for others. You must live a strong life. You must develop a strong personality, strong character, strong will. Okay? Then only you can use that strength and the willpower for the for helping others, for the sake of others. So, it must be a nation first. First there must be the nation, then there must be the humanity. But that does not justify us in forgetting the ultimate aim of evolution. God in the nation becomes the realization, the first moment to us, because the nation is the chosen means or condition through which we rise to the higher synthesis, God in humanity, God in all creatures, God in himself and ourselves. So, this is our goal, realizing the humanity. In the sense, it is God in humanity. Okay? Because you know, he is a theist. In the beginning we have already mentioned that Aurobindo is a theist, he believes in God. So, he says God is our final goal and that God is in humanity. God can be seen in a human being, in the humanity in the wider sense or in the widest sense. Okay? God in all creatures, and again he widens, not in simply in human being, but in all creatures. God in himself and ourselves. God must be in ourselves and in himself. So, this is the final concept of nation or nationalism according to Aurobindo, because nationalism is a very important concept, not as an end in itself, but as a means to the realization of another
humanity.
Goal. Our ideal therefore is an Indian nationalism. The evolution of the nation is the growth which is most important now to humanity, because human selfishness, family selfishness, class selfishness, having still deep roots in the past, must learn to efface themselves in the larger national self, in order that the God in humanity may grow. Therefore, it is that nationalism is the dharma of the age, and the God reveals himself to us in our common mother. So, it is a quotation going on. So, his ideas goes on. So, it is a dharma, it is our duty to develop, to understand, to create what is called a nationalism, and that again Indian nationalism.
I think it is very much similar to Swami Vivekananda,
Yes.
the concept of humanity.
Yes.
Because he also said to see a God, you can see the God in other person.
Yes.
By doing service to the society.
Of
and
course.
That is it's also shared by Aurobindo, because humanity represents the God realization or otherwise the self realization itself.
Yes, you are right. So, Aurobindo, as he is a contemporary to in Vivekananda, they are all considered to be contemporary socio-political philosophers in India. So, they share the same ideas, but the wording they put may be different. When we come to discuss Vivekananda or in Aurobindo specifically, their wordings are different. See, here also we find the Gnostic being, the nationalism, that is, these are the wordings that are typically absent in the Indian traditional philosophies. Okay? But Aurobindo is actually finding out new terminologies for expressing the older ideas. Okay?
That is, he was making a practical Vedanta.
Of course.
Talking about practical.
Then what he says is, there is yet another fulfillment for which only few individuals have shown themselves ready, the enlargement of the self to include all humanity. So, first he speaks about the necessity of nationalism. Why nationalism is needed? Because it is the first step to the realization of humanity. Then he says that the realization of humanity is possible, not for all. It's only, there are certain people who have realized it. See, a step forward has been taken in this direction by the self-immolation of the few humanitarian ideals. But to sacrifice the interests of the nation to the larger interests of humanity is an act of which humanity in the mass is not yet capable. See, this is not capable for the masses. Working for humanity or I am realizing the humanity or raising to that level of humanity, that is not possible for an ordinary masses. For that, we have to rise. The weaknesses, drawbacks of nationalism is to be renounced, has to be removed. Then only humanity will appear. So, that is not possible for an ordinary human being. God prepares, but He does not hasten the ripening of the fruit before its season. See, God prepares, but there is no what is called hasty, there is no what is called speed. It is not something that today we have to realize it. It has to go its course.
Gradual.
It has to complete its course. Due course only it will come. Before hasten the ripening of the fruit, the season has to come, then only the fruit will be ripened. Isn't it? Similarly, we have to wait for it. That is what Aurobindo says. Then he continues, there are two stages in the life of a nation. So, nationalism is important. He established it. It will come, okay, and it will rise to the level of humanity, because when the season comes, the fruit will ripen. That is what he says. Now, in the nation, in the life of a nation, there are two stages. One, the stage when it is forming itself, or the newly forming itself, the stage of formation. Okay? And the second, when it is formed, organized and powerful. So, we can imagine India in its formation at the stage when India, the freedom movement was going on, India got independence. So, at that stage it is in the formative stage. Now, we can say it is already formed, or it is organized, or it is more powerful. The first is the stage when nationalism makes rightly its greatest demands on the individual. So, nationalism is more demanding in the first stage, because when the nation is in the formative stage, when in the process of formation, when all the village republics have been dissolved, okay, and the nation has been India as a nation has been emerging, then the process of nationalism or the elements of nationalism, it has a demand on the individual. In the second, it should abate its demands, and having satisfied, should preserve itself in cosmopolitanism. As the individual preserves itself in the family in the class in the nation, not destroying itself needlessly, but recognizing a larger interest. See, the individual, the family, the society, then the nation. It comes like that. But that does not mean that we lose our family, that we lose our individuality, that we lose our society, but we are all preserving it. Similarly, we have to create the nation. In the struggles of a subject nation to realize its separate existence, the larger interest can only be viewed in prospect, and as a higher inspiration to a broad-minded and generous patriotism. No sacrifice the nation to the larger interest is possible, for the nation must exist before it can sacrifice its interest for a higher good. All that he says that first of all you form what is called a nation. You stand as a nation, you stand on your own legs. Then only you can think of cosmopolitanism or humanity or larger interests. That is only second. So, nationalism or nation is more important. Further, Aurobindo rejected the theory that the essential conditions of nationality are the unity of language, unity of religion and life, and unity of race. So, he is critical about the existing views. The one of the existing views is that nationalism means there must be unity. Unity in so many things like language, religion, lifestyle, unity of race and cultures. This is one of the arguments. Now, Aurobindo says that this is not correct. I cannot agree with this. He says, he pointed out that, he gives examples. The English nation itself was built out of various races. So, think of the English people. They are built, for example, England, Scotland, Ireland. So, that is called English people. So, that is what he says. English nation itself was built out of various races. He argued that the idea that the unity in race, religion or language is essential to nationality is an idea which will not bear examination. We cannot accept it. This will not stand. In that case, we cannot speak of English people. They are built out of so many castes, so many classes, so many languages and so on. Now, he referred to the example of the Roman Empire again. He gives
examples
which created a common language, a common religion and life, and tried its best to crush our racial diversities under the weight of its uniform system, but it failed to make one great nation. He gives one positive example and a negative example. Okay? So, you think of what is called a Roman Empire. So, we know the mighty Roman Empire. So, where we find there is a common language, common religion, common government, like that. It failed to make one great nation. It could not stand the test of time. So, in an illuminating passage, Sri Aurobindo defined the essential elements of nationality. Therefore, you cannot say that nationality means unity in all respects, language, religion, culture, caste. This is not the unity in all these respects does not mean nationalism. That is what he says. Now, he wrote, there are certain essential conditions, geographical unity, a common past, a powerful common interest impelling towards unity, and certain favorable political conditions which enable the impulse to realize it in an organized government, expressing the nationality and perpetuating its simple and united existence. This may be true. This may be provided by a part of the nation. Okay? This is only partial truth. A race or community uniting the others under its leadership or domination, or by united resistance to a common pressure from outside or within. A common enthusiasm coalescing with a common interest is the most powerful fosterer of nationality. So, apart from all these geographical conditions, physical conditions and all, there must be a common interest. The basic interest must be there that we are going to create a nation. Okay? We are for the nation. We have to have a nation, like that. That basic interest must be there. We believe that the necessary elements are present in India. Okay? We believe that the time has come and that by a common resistance to a common pressure in the shape of boycott, inspired by a common enthusiasm and ideal, that united nationality for which the whole history of India has been a preparation will be speedily and mightily accomplished. He speaks of his own time. That was the time when the waves of freedom movement was going on. From every quarters, people were very conscious of the fact that India must get freedom. Okay, so many resistances, he referred to boycott and so many movements have come. He says that the right atmosphere is here in India now for the creation of Indian nationality or Indian nation, is what he says. So, this is the first point about the political philosophy of Sri Aurobindo, the concept of nationalism, that he says that nationalism is the very powerful concept that you have to build up. So far, India has no nationalism because India is in the form of independent, separate villages. Units and village republics. So, what we have to have is a nationalism, and see, he says that it is not the final goal. The final goal is realizing humanity. So, from this background of village republics, we have to develop what is called a nationalism, and then we have to move towards humanity. But before realizing or for realizing humanity, nationalism, building up nation and building up nationalism is very important. Otherwise, we cannot go forward. So, that is the importance of the concept of nationalism according to Aurobindo, and he says that in India the right atmosphere is present at his own time. The atmosphere is very conducive for the creation of an Indian nation. That is what he called for, to create an Indian nation. That is the first principle.
Now, we can speak about the unity. So, what was his concept of unity of mankind?
The concept of human unity according to Aurobindo is another concept, very significant concept in his political philosophy. Now, he says that unity is the very basis of human existence, and the ideal is to secure the unity of human race. That is what human unity, founded on the free groupings which are natural associations of free individuals. So, his idea is to form a human unity which is an association, natural association, it is not forced or compelled one. Natural association of the free type of individuals. Okay? Individual must be free and he must be associated in a natural way without any force, then forming what is called human unity. Aurobindo accepts that this is an ideal. Close appropriation to it will put us on the right track. A free world union must be a complex unity based on diversity, and that diversity must be based on free self-determination. Unity should be the largest principle of life and freedom its foundation stone. This is how he explains it. It must be based on diversity, it must be based on freedom, but it must be unity. A psychical unity is the first in need for the growth towards greater unity. That is why he does not emphasize what is called physical unity. A mental unity is more important. It signifies a free development everywhere with a constant friendly interchange, a close understanding and a feeling of our common humanity and common ideals. So, a kind of understanding, a kind of mental growth or development, that is what, it is not a physical get together or physical coming together. That is what he does not mean by human unity. It may be an ideal according to Aurobindo. It is a unity at the psychic level or mental level, where there are common ideals, common understanding, common feeling for the humanity. So, such kind of a mental development, psychic development, that psychic unity that Aurobindo is talking about. So, finally, he emphasized the point of human unity at the level of mind. At the psychical level, not at the not properly at the physical or bodily level or material level, but to rise from the material level to the higher mental level. That is what Aurobindo means by human unity.
Okay, ma'am, can we give some questions for the students from this session?
Yes, you can continue.
First one, examine Aurobindo's views on nationalism. Second, comment on the humanistic nature of contemporary socio-political philosophy in India. Third, explain the concept of humanity according to Aurobindo. Fourth, discuss the goal of the political philosophy of Aurobindo. Ma'am, can you mention some reference for further study.
So, Aurobindo is a well known contemporary Indian philosopher, and the ashram dedicated to Sri Aurobindo in Pondicherry ashram is a very good resource of the complete works and life and activities of Sri Aurobindo. Any student can go there and have research materials on Sri Aurobindo from there. Apart from that, many printed books are there on the writings and the works of Sri Aurobindo. Now, in a contemporary Indian philosophy, books on contemporary Indian philosophy are available in plenty. For example, contemporary Indian philosophy by G.V. Saroja, then contemporary Indian thought by B.K. Lal, contemporary Indian philosophy by Srivastava. So, these are the books on which all the contemporary Indian thinkers are dealt with in detail. Students can access these books from libraries of philosophy departments in the universities and libraries. Plenty of materials are available for their further research and study, writing assignments and so on.
Thank you for watching this session. We will meet again with another session, Nationalism and Human Unity by Sri Aurobindo. Thank you.
Thank you.